The solar storm hit training station Zephyr 7 like an invisible hammer. The massive wave of charged particles swept through space and slammed into the station with devastating force. All the lights went out at once, emergency power kicked in, but the red glow told everyone that something was very wrong. Commander Lyra Voss stood on the bridge watching the damage reports flow across her screen. Her silver hair caught the emergency lighting as she read each terrible line. The main power core was completely dead. The backup systems were draining fast. Life support was running on borrowed time. Lyra was Velari, and her people were known across the galaxy for their skill with energy. Her pointed ears twitched as she felt the electrical systems of the station struggling around her. The Velari could sense energy flows, like humans could smell flowers, but right now all she felt was everything dying. Sub-Commander Zara Dek climbed up from the engineering deck. Her reptilian face showed no emotion, but Lyra could see worry in her yellow eyes. The Krathen were logical people who planned for everything, but even they had not planned for this. Zara delivered her report in the flat tone her species used for bad news. The quantum fusion core had suffered complete cascade failure. The primary generators were melted slag. The secondary power grid was fried beyond repair. They had maybe 3 days of emergency power left around the station. Nearly 200 cadets from a dozen different species tried to understand what was happening. The Velari cadets gathered in groups and tried to channel their natural energy abilities into the power systems. Their pale hands glowed with soft blue light as they pushed their organic electricity into the failing networks. But it was like trying to fill an ocean with a kupta. Krathen cadets formed orderly lines and began calculating power consumption rates. They worked out schedules for reducing life support in non-essential areas. Their tactical minds approached the crisis like a military problem to be solved, with discipline and sacrifice in the middle of all this alien activity. One human cadet sat quietly in the observation deck. Amy Patterson was 20 years old with brown hair and ordinary brown eyes. She was not tall, or strong, or beautiful by any standard. Her people had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago. Most aliens still thought of humans as primitive newcomers. Zemi watched her classmates struggle with the power crisis. She saw the Valari pushing themselves to exhaustion, trying to generate enough energy. She watched the Krathen making lists of who would have to go into hibernation first. She listened to the debates about which systems were most important to keep running. The station was huge. It needed massive amounts of power just to keep air flowing and gravity working. The alien technologies were efficient, but they were built for abundant energy from quantum cores. Nobody had designed them to run on the tiny amounts of power that organic beings could produce. As the hours passed, the situation got worse. The temperature started dropping as heating systems shut down automatically. Lights dimmed in corridor after corridor. The artificial gravity began to fluctuate, making everyone feel sick. The computer systems that controlled everything started failing one by one. Emmy heard Commander Voss announce that they had sent distress signals, but the nearest rescue ships were weeks away. Even if they came immediately, there would not be enough time. The emergency power would run out long before help arrived. Everyone was going to die in the cold dark of space. The alien cadets worked harder. Their panic was quiet and controlled, but Amy could see it growing. The Valari were exhausting themselves channeling energy. The Krathen were arguing about hibernation schedules. The other species were proposing increasingly desperate solutions. Some suggested abandoning parts of the station to concentrate power in a smaller area. Others wanted to try cannibalizing the engines to build a new power source. A few even talked about using the escape pods, but there were not enough for everyone, and they would only delay the inevitable. Listened to all these ideas, but her mind was working differently. While her classmates thought about advanced technology and energy physics, she thought about simple mechanical problems. She had grown up on a farm on Earth where things broke down all the time and you had to fix them with whatever was available. She remembered her grandfather telling stories about the old days when humans had no electricity at all. They had used water wheels and windmills to grind grain. They had built steam engines that ran on burning wood. They had created power from nothing but movement and heat and simple machines. As Amy sat in the darkening observation deck, she started to see the station differently. The aliens saw a sophisticated technological system that needed quantum power cores and energy crystals, but Amy saw something else. She saw potential energy everywhere. The station was full of equipment that moved, exercise machines in the gymnasium, conveyor belts in the cargo bays rotating, systems that moved air and water. All of these things could be turned into generators if someone knew how to do it. The problem was not that there was no energy available. The problem was that nobody was thinking about how to capture it. Amy stood up and walked toward the command center. She passed groups of exhausted Valerie cadets who had collapsed from pushing their energy abilities too hard. She saw Krathan officers making lists of who would die first when the power ran out. She heard other aliens arguing about technologies that would take months to build. When she reached the bridge commander, Voss was staring at a display showing their remaining power levels. The numbers were falling steadily like sand through an hourglass. Zara was explaining why none of the proposed solutions would work fast enough. Everyone was talking about complex problems that needed complex solutions. Amy cleared her throat and spoke up. She told them she had an idea. It was simple, and it would work. With equipment they already had, the aliens turned to look at her with expressions of polite skepticism. They were willing to listen, but they did not expect much from the primitive human. Amy began to explain her plan, but she could see that they did not understand. She was talking about basic mechanical principles while they were thinking about quantum physics. She was describing simple machines while they imagined advanced alien technology. The power levels kept dropping, and time was running out. Amy knew she was right, but she also knew that convincing them would be the hardest part of all. Amy stood in the middle of the bridge, surrounded by alien faces that showed confusion and doubt. Commander Voss listened politely, but her silver eyebrows were raised in obvious skepticism. Sub-Commander Zara crossed her scaly arms and waited for Amy to explain how primitive human ideas could solve their crises. Amy pointed toward the gymnasium and began her explanation. The station had dozens of exercise machines that cadets used for physical training, treadmills that moved, belts when people ran on them, exercise bikes that spun when people pedaled, rowing machines that moved back and forth when people pulled on them. All of these machines contained motors and moving parts. The key insight was that any machine with a motor could work backwards. Instead of using electricity to create movement, they could use movement to create electricity. Amy had learned this principle as a child, when her father showed her how to make a flashlight work by cranking a handle. Specialist Kira Shedomir spoke up from across the bridge. Her voice carried the musical tone that all Valari used when they thought someone was being foolish. She pointed out that the energy output from such primitive devices would be tiny compared to what the station needed. A few humans running on treadmills could never replace a quantum fusion. Korami nodded and agreed that one treadmill would not produce much power, but the station had 43 exercise machines in the main gymnasium. It also had cargo handling equipment, conveyor systems, and maintenance platforms that could all be converted. Every bit of mechanical motion could become electrical energy. Tactical Officer Nick's iron scale did quick calculations in her head, like all Krathan could. Her yellow eyes flicked back and forth as she worked through the numbers. She announced that even if they converted every possible machine, the total output would still be insufficient. They would need constant manual operation by dozens of people working in shifts. Amy smiled and said that was exactly her plan. The station had nearly 200 cadets from species that were all physically capable. Most aliens were actually stronger and had better endurance than humans. If they worked together in organized shifts, they could generate enough power to keep life support running. Commander Voss asked how Amy could be certain about the power requirements. Amy explained that she had been studying the station's systems since arriving. She knew how much energy each critical system needed. She had calculated that 40 people working constantly could produce enough electricity for basic life support. The aliens looked at each other with expressions of disbelief. Their advanced civilizations had moved beyond manual labor thousands of years ago. The idea of generating power through physical effort seemed barbaric and inefficient to them. They were used to having unlimited energy from sophisticated sources. Chief Engineer Rachel Torres had been listening quietly from the engineering station. She was a gruff Krathan who had worked with machinery her entire life. Something about Amy's human approach interested her. She asked specific questions about gear ratios and voltage regulation. That showed she understood the technical challenges. Amy answered each question with detailed knowledge that surprised everyone. She explained how they could use the magnetic components from the artificial gravity systems to build simple generators. She described methods for regulating voltage using equipment from the electronics workshops. She outlined plans for storing power in improvised battery banks. The more Amy talked, the more the aliens realized she actually understood what she was proposing. This was not just wishful thinking from a desperate human. This was a real engineering solution based on solid mechanical principles that could actually work. Sub-Commander Zara began to see the possibilities. She asked about the timeline for building such a system. Amy estimated they could have basic power generation working within 12 hours if everyone helped with the construction. The aliens would need to follow her instructions exactly, even when the methods seemed strange to them. Cadet Luna Starweaver stepped forward with typical Valari grace. Her species were naturally skilled with delicate work, and she offered to help with the complex wiring that would be needed. Amy accepted gratefully and began explaining how they would strip copper wire from damaged systems throughout the station. Heavy specialist Maya Battleborn volunteered her strength for moving the heavy exercise equipment. The Krathan were physically powerful, and Maya could handle machinery that would require several humans working together. Amy added her to the team and started planning how to transport everything they would need. As Amy continued describing her plan, more cadets volunteered to help. Even the skeptical ones could see that this was their only real option. The advanced solutions proposed by others would take too long or required materials they did not have. Amy's human approach was primitive, but it was also achievable. Commander Voss made the decision to authorize Amy's plan. She announced that all non-essential activities were suspended. Every cadet would either work on building the generator system or rest in preparation for operating it. The survival of everyone on the station now depended on human ingenuity and alien cooperation. Ma felt a mixture of excitement and terror as she realized that 200 lives were now depending on her idea. She had never built anything this complex before, but she knew the principles were sound. Her grandfather had always said that humans were good at making things work with whatever they had available. The aliens began organizing themselves into work teams. According to their natural abilities, the Valari would handle precision work, the Krathan would provide muscle and organization, the other species would contribute their own unique skills. Amy found herself in the strange position of commanding beings whose civilizations were thousands of years more advanced than her own. As they prepared to begin construction, Amy looked around at the diverse group of aliens who were trusting her with their lives. She thought about all the human engineers throughout history who had solved impossible problems with simple solutions. Now it was her turn to prove that sometimes the most advanced approach was also the most basic one. The power levels continued to drop, but for the first time since the crisis began, Amy felt hope instead of despair. They were going to build something that had never been tried before, and they were going to do it together. Amy led her team of alien cadets through the corridors toward the gymnasium. The emergency lighting cast red shadows on the walls, and the air was getting colder as the heating systems struggled with failing power. Behind her walked beings from 6 different worlds, all following a human who was barely old enough to vote. The gymnasium was a large space filled with gleaming exercise equipment that represented the finest in galactic fitness technology. Each machine was designed for multiple alien anatomies, with adjustable settings for different species. Amy looked at them and saw the components she needed scattered across 43 sophisticated devices. Luna Starweaver moved with typical Valari grace as she examined the first treadmill. Her pale fingers traced the electrical connections, while her sensitive touch felt the flow of power through the process. She asked Amy how they could reverse the process to make electricity instead of using it. Amy knelt beside the machine and opened the motor housing inside. She found exactly what she expected: a simple electric motor with copper windings and permanent magnets that could work in either direction. She explained to Luna that they needed to disconnect the motor from the station power and connect it to their new electrical grid. Instead, Maya Battleborn used her Krathan strength to tip the treadmill on its side so they could access the internal components. Her powerful hands made quick work of the bolts that held the housing together. She was amazed at how simple the motor actually was beneath all the sophisticated control systems as they worked. Amy shared stories from human history. She told them about the first power plants that used water wheels to turn generators. She described how her ancestors had learned to harness wind and steam and falling water to create electricity. The aliens listened with growing fascination as they realized humans had been solving energy problems for centuries. Cadets Beth Morgan arrived with a cart full of tools she had gathered from the maintenance workshops. The young human had volunteered to help her fellow human, and she proved surprisingly skilled at understanding Amy mechanical explanations. Together they began stripping copper wire from damaged systems throughout the station. The work was slow and careful. Each motor had to be tested to make sure it could generate electricity when turned by hand. The wiring had to be configured to combine the output from multiple machines into a single electrical system. Amy found herself teaching alien engineering students concepts that human children learned in basic science classes. Rachel Torres watched everything with the critical eye of an experienced engineer. She had initially been skeptical, but Amy's knowledge of mechanical systems impressed her. The human understood gear ratios and electrical principles better than some aliens who had studied engineering for years. As the hours passed, more cadets joined the work teams. The Valari proved naturally gifted at handling the delicate electrical connections. Their enhanced sensitivity to energy flows helped them optimize the wiring for maximum efficiency. Luna became Amy's primary assistant for all the precision work. The Krathan cadets organized themselves into heavy lifting teams under Maya's leadership. They moved equipment with military precision and followed Amy's instructions exactly, even when the method seemed inefficient compared to alien technologies. Their discipline and strength made the construction possibly made, showed them how to build voltage regulators using components from the electronics workshops. She taught them to create capacitor banks from emergency equipment that could store electrical energy for when it was needed most. Each lesson revealed how much practical knowledge humans had developed through centuries of working with limited resources. The most challenging part was creating the main power distribution system. Amy needed to connect dozens of small generators into a network that could power the station. Life support systems. She used fiber optic cables from the communication systems and control circuits from the navigation equipment. As they worked, the aliens began to understand that human technology was not primitive, it was different. Human engineers approached problems by combining simple solutions in creative ways. Instead of building complex systems that did everything perfectly, Amy's approach seemed crude, but it was also remarkably effective. Cadet Sam Davis arrived with news that other teams were working throughout the station. Groups of volunteers were dismantling conveyor systems and maintenance platforms to extract their motors. Every piece of equipment that could generate electricity was being converted to their new power grid. The aliens were learning to think like human engineers. They stopped looking for perfect solutions and started finding ways to make imperfect solutions work well enough. Luna discovered that she could increase generator efficiency by adjusting the magnetic field strength. Maya found ways to reduce mechanical friction that increased power output. Maya coordinated everything while working on the most complex electrical connections. Her hands moved quickly as she spliced wires and tested circuits. She had never built anything this large before, but the principles were the same as the small projects she had done as a child. As the construction continued, Amy realized that something remarkable was happening. The alien cadets were not just following her instructions. They were beginning to contribute their own ideas and improvements each species brought, unique abilities that made the project better than any human could have built alone. The Valorai's sensitivity to energy helped them optimize electrical flows. The Krathan's strength in organization made construction faster and more efficient. The other species contributed their own special skills. Amy found herself learning as much as she was teaching. When the basic generator system was finally complete, Amy stood back and looked at what they had built. It was not beautiful like alien technology. It was a collection of improvised parts and jury-rigged connections that would horrify any proper engineer, but it was also something that could save their lives. The aliens gathered around as Amy prepared to test their creation for the first time. 200 lives depended on whether a human farm girl really understood how to make electricity from exercise equipment. The moment of truth had finally arrived. Amy placed her hands on the control panel they had built from spare electronics and took a deep breath. Around her stood dozens of alien cadets, who had worked through the night to build something that should not have been possible. The improvised generator system stretched throughout the gymnasium, connecting 43 exercise machines into a single electrical network. Luna Starweaver stood ready at the main power coupling, her sensitive Valerie fingers positioned to monitor the electrical flow. Maya Battleborn had organized teams of Krathan cadets at each major generator station, ready to begin the coordinated effort that would determine if they lived or died. Amy called out the startup sequence, and the first team began running on the converted treadmills. The alien cadets had to learn a new kind of physical coordination, moving at exactly the right speed to generate optimal power without overloading the improvised electrical systems. The sound of footsteps echoed through the gymnasium as more teams joined in. The voltage readings began climbing slowly on their makeshift displays. Amy watched the numbers rise and felt her heart pounding with excitement and terror. 5 volts, 10 volts, 20 volts. The system was actually working, but they needed much more power to make any real difference. Maya led her Krathan team onto the converted exercise bikes and began pedaling with mechanical precision. Their powerful legs drove the generators faster than any human could manage. The voltage readings jumped upward as the reptilian aliens added their strength to the growing electrical output. More teams activated throughout the station. Groups of cadets operated the converted conveyor systems in the cargo bays. Others worked the improvised generators built from maintenance equipment. Every piece of machinery that could turn motion into electricity was now contributing to their survival. Amy coordinated the entire operation from the central control station she had built. She watched power flow readings from dozens of sources and directed teams to adjust their effort when voltage dropped or surged. The aliens had to learn to work together with perfect timing to keep the electrical grid stable. The first major test came when they tried to power the life support systems. Amy through the switch that connected their generator network to the station air recycling equipment. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then the fans began turning, and fresh air started flowing through the corridors. Commander Voss arrived in the gymnasium just as they achieved their first major success. She had been monitoring the station systems from the bridge, and could hardly believe what she was seeing. The improvised human generator was actually producing enough electricity to keep them breathing. Amy explained that this was just the beginning. They needed to maintain constant power generation in carefully coordinated shifts. The aliens would have to work in rotating teams 24 hours a day until rescue arrived. Each species would contribute according to their natural abilities and endurance. The Krathan proved to be powerhouses at high-intensity generation. Maya and her teams could produce massive amounts of electricity for short periods. Their military training and physical conditioning made them perfect for surge power when the station needed extra energy for critical systems. The Valari excelled at steady long-term generation. Luna and her teams could maintain consistent power output for hours without fatigue. Their natural grace and energy sensitivity helped them optimize the generator efficiency better than any automated system. could have managed, Amy found herself in the strange position of commanding aliens whose civilizations had conquered space travel thousands of years before humans discovered fire. But her practical knowledge of mechanical systems made her the natural leader for this impossible project. As the hours passed, the improvised generator system proved more effective than anyone had dared hope. They were producing enough electricity to run life support, heating, and basic lighting. The station was no longer dying in the cold darkness of space. The aliens began to understand that Amy's approach was not just about generating power, it was about cooperation and shared effort. Every cadet had to contribute their unique abilities to make the system work. The crisis was teaching them to work together in ways their advanced civilizations had never required. Amy made constant improvements to the generator network. She showed teams how to increase efficiency by adjusting their movement patterns. She taught them to coordinate their efforts to smooth out power fluctuations. She even found ways to store excess energy for use during shift changes. The aliens were amazed by Amy's ability to solve problems in real time. When a generator failed, she quickly rewired the system to compensate when power demand increased. She reorganized the teams to produce more electricity. Her practical engineering skills kept them alive moment by moment. Commander Voss spent time in the gymnasium watching the operation and talking with the alien cadets. She was impressed, not just by the technical achievement, but by the transformation she saw in her students. They were learning that sometimes the most advanced solution was also the most human one. Sub-Commander Zara reported that station systems were actually running more efficiently than before the crisis. Amy's power management approach distributed electrical load more evenly than the automatic systems had. The aliens were discovering that human engineering methods had unexpected advantages as the days passed. Amy's generator system became more sophisticated. The alien cadets contributed their own improvements and innovations. They were learning to think like human engineers, finding simple solutions to complex problems and making things work with whatever materials were available. The station that had been dying from power failure was now alive, with the sound of coordinated effort. Aliens who had never done manual labor were working together to create electricity with their own bodies. The crisis had brought out capabilities that none of them knew they possessed. May realized that they had achieved something remarkable. They had not just survived the power crisis, they had proven that cooperation between species could overcome any challenge. When guided by human ingenuity and determination, the galaxy was about to learn a new respect for human engineering. 3 weeks after the solar storm struck training station, Zephyr 7, the rescue fleet arrived, expecting to find a crippled station running on emergency power. Instead, Zephyr, something that amazed every alien officer who came aboard the station, was operating at full capacity with all systems running smoothly. Admiral Kex Vorthok of the Krathan Defense Force toured the improvised generator system with growing astonishment. His tactical mind could appreciate the elegant simplicity of Amy's solution, but his advanced engineering background made him realize how difficult it had been to achieve. May stood in the gymnasium that had become the heart of their power generation network. Around her, alien cadets operated the converted exercise equipment with practiced efficiency. They had transformed from desperate refugees into a coordinated team that could produce electricity more reliably than most automated systems. Commander Voss presented her detailed report to the rescue fleet commanders. She described how a single human cadet had saved 200 lives using nothing but mechanical principles and alien cooperation. The advanced civilizations represented in the rescue fleet had never seen anything like Amy. Valari, High Council member who had come with the rescue fleet, spent an hour questioning Amy about her engineering methods. She was fascinated by the human approach to problem-solving that combined practical knowledge with creative thinking in ways that Valari energy manipulation could not match. Amy explained her generator system to engineers from 6 different species, showing them how simple mechanical devices could be combined to create complex electrical networks. They were amazed by her understanding of power distribution, voltage regulation, and load. Balancing achieved through intuitive mechanical principles, Luna Starweaver had become Amy's most capable assistant, and now helped demonstrate the system to visiting officials. Her Valari grace, combined with human engineering knowledge, made her a perfect example of how cooperation between species could achieve impossible results. Maya Battleborn led tours of the power generation stations throughout the station, showing how every piece of available equipment had been converted to produce electricity. Her Krathan precision and human-learned improvisation skills impressed military engineers who thought they understood all possible approaches to crisis management. Rescue Fleet brought supplies to repair the quantum fusion core, but Commander Voss requested permission to keep Amy generator system as a backup power source. The human approach had proven more reliable and adaptable than the sophisticated alien technology that had failed during the solar storm. Mamie found herself promoted to senior cadet and assigned to develop new training programs that would teach alien military academies about human engineering methods the galaxy was beginning to understand. That humans brought unique capabilities that complemented advanced alien technologies. The formal recognition ceremony took place in the main assembly hall, with representatives from all the major galactic governments. Amy received for innovative engineering, exceptional leadership, and outstanding service to interspecies cooperation, but the real recognition came from her fellow cadets, who had learned to see humans as more than primitive newcomers. The aliens now understood that human engineering was not about having the most advanced technology, it was about making any technology work when it mattered most. Specialist Kira Shadowmere, who had initially mocked Amy's primitive approach, now served as her enthusiastic assistant in the new Alternative Solutions program. She had learned that Valerie energy sensitivity, combined with human and mechanical knowledge, could solve problems that neither species could handle. On tactical, Officer Nick's Iron Scale incorporated Amy crisis management methods into her tactical planning courses. She taught other Krathan cadets that sometimes the most logical solution was also the most human one, combining strategic thinking with practical improvisation. Amy established workshops where alien cadets could learn basic mechanical principles that their advanced civilizations had forgotten: how to build simple machines from available materials, how to generate power without quantum cores, how to solve complex problems with straightforward solutions. The new program attracted cadets from across the galaxy who wanted to learn human engineering methods. Universities and military academies began requesting human instructors who could teach the practical problem-solving skills that had saved training station Zephyr 7. Amy often stood in the observation deck where she had first conceived her generator plan, looking out at the stars and thinking about how much had changed. Human engineering was no longer seen as primitive, but as a valuable complement to alien technology. The generator system continued operating alongside the repaired quantum core, providing backup power and serving as a training tool for cadets learning alternative engineering methods. The sound of coordinated effort still echoed through the gymnasium as new students learned to create electricity through teamwork. Commander Voss submitted recommendations that human engineering principles be incorporated into standard military academy curricula across the galaxy. The crisis had proven that diversity of approach was just as important as advancement of technology for solving unexpected problems. 3 months later, Amy received word that her methods were being taught at academies throughout known space. Human instructors were traveling to alien worlds to share the practical engineering knowledge that could save lives when sophisticated systems failed. The story that began with a desperate crisis had become a transformation in how the galaxy viewed human capabilities. Amy had proven that sometimes the most advanced solution was the simplest one, and that cooperation between different approaches could achieve what no single species could accomplish. Amy Patterson had started as an unknown human cadet at an alien military academy. She had become the teacher who showed the galaxy that human ingenuity was not primitive, but essential. The universe was learning that humans brought something unique to the community of advanced Civilizations, the stars looked the same as they had before the crisis, but everything else had changed. Amy had not just saved lives. She had opened minds and proven that the newest members of the galactic community had valuable contributions to make. The future would be built through cooperation between human creativity and alien knowledge.